There is a battle most people don't see. It doesn't happen in the open, and it rarely announces itself with noise. It lives quietly beneath the surface within relationships, within circumstances, and often within our own minds. What we call hidden enemies are not always people. Sometimes they are fears we've normalized, wounds we've ignored, or patterns we've inherited without question. Psalm 3 speaks from a place of pressure, betrayal, and vulnerability. It is not just a prayer for protection, it is a confrontation with the unseen forces that threaten our peace. When you begin to understand this psalm deeply, you realize it is less about destroying others and more about awakening your inner strength, your awareness, and your connection to divine protection. Because what truly destroys hidden enemies is not raja, is clarity, truth, and the courage to stand grounded when everything around you feels uncertain. Hidden enemies are rarely obvious. They do not always come in the form of people who openly oppose you or declare their intentions. More often they exist quietly, subtly shaping your thoughts, your reactions, and your sense of self. To recognize them, you have to move beyond surface-level awareness and begin to observe what is happening beneath your immediate experience. This requires honesty, and it requires the willingness to question what you have long accepted as normal. One of the most overlooked hidden enemies is internal, the voice that constantly doubts you, the belief that you are not enough, the fear that keeps you small. These are not accidental. They are often the result of past wounds, conditioning, and unresolved emotional experiences. Over time, they become so familiar that you stop recognizing them as harmful. Instead, they begin to feel like truth. But they are not truth, they are echoes of something that once hurt you and was never fully processed. At the same time, hidden enemies can exist in your environment. Not every smile is sincere, and not every supportive word carries genuine intention. There are dynamics in relationships where jealousy, insecurity, or manipulation operate quietly. These forces don't always present themselves directly. Instead, they influence through subtle discouragement, passive negativity, or the quiet undermining of your confidence. Recognizing this does not mean becoming paranoid or distrusting everyone. It means developing awareness so that you are not unconsciously shaped by what is unhealthy. Awareness is not about judgment, it is about clarity. When you begin to recognize hidden enemies, you are not labeling people or situations as purely good or bad. You are noticing patterns. You are paying attention to how certain interactions make you feel, how certain thoughts repeatedly pull you down, and how certain environments drain your energy rather than support it. This level of awareness allows you to step out of automatic reactions and into conscious choice. There is also a deeper layer to this recognition. Sometimes what we perceive as external enemies are reflections of unresolved inner conflicts. If there is a part of you that feels unworthy, you may be more sensitive to criticism, even when it is mild or unintended. If there is a part of you that fears abandonment, you may interpret distance as rejection. In this way, the boundary between inner and outer enemies becomes blurred. The real work is not just identifying what is outside of you, but understanding how it interacts with what is within you. Psalm 3 emerges from a place where threats feel overwhelming and personal safety feels uncertain. It acknowledges the presence of enemies, but it also shifts the focus toward a deeper reliance on protection and truth. In recognizing hidden enemies, the goal is not to become consumed by them, but to see them clearly without losing your center. When you can observe without being overtaken by fear, you begin to reclaim your power. Recognition changes your relationship with what once controlled you. What remains unseen has influence over you, but what is seen clearly begins to lose its hold. Whether it is an internal belief or an external influence, bringing it into awareness creates space. In that space, you are no longer reacting blindly. You are choosing your response, grounded in understanding rather than driven by unconscious patterns. There is a moment in every person's life when trust is shaken, when the ground beneath you no longer feels stable, and when betrayal, whether real or perceived, creates a deep sense of vulnerability. In those moments, the human instinct is often to defend, to control, or to retaliate. But Psalm 3 introduces a different kind of power, one that does not come from force or reaction, but from surrendering to a protection that is greater than human effort. Divine protection is not always loud or dramatic. It does not always remove the difficulty instantly or erase the presence of those who oppose you. Instead, it works in a quieter, more profound way. It stabilizes you from within. It creates a sense of grounding even when circumstances feel chaotic. When betrayal happens, especially from those you trusted, it can feel like your entire sense of safety has been compromised. But divine protection reminds you that your ultimate security was never meant to rest solely in people or situations. Betrayal has a way of penetrating deeply because it touches on our need for connection and belonging. It can awaken old wounds, amplify insecurities, and distort your perception of reality. You may begin to question your judgment, your worth, or even your ability to trust again. In this state, the mind often becomes a battlefield, replaying events, analyzing every detail, and searching for answers that may never fully come. This is where divine protection becomes essential, not as an escape from pain, but as a shield that prevents the pain from defining you. The power of divine protection lies in its ability to create inner distance between you and the chaos around you. It allows you to witness what is happening without being completely consumed by it. Instead of reacting impulsively or being driven by hurt, you begin to respond from a place of calm awareness. This does not mean you deny your emotions or suppress your experience. It means you are not controlled by them. You are held by something deeper, something steady. There is also an element of trust involved in this kind of protection. Trusting in something beyond yourself requires letting go of the illusion that you must manage everything on your own. It means acknowledging that there are forces and outcomes that are not within your control. This can feel uncomfortable, especially if you are used to relying on your own strength to navigate challenges. But it is in this letting go that a different kind of strength emerges, one that is not fragile or reactive, but rooted and enduring. Divine protection also reframes how you see your enemies and your circumstances. Instead of viewing them solely as threats, you begin to see them as part of a larger process that is shaping your awareness and your resilience. This does not justify harmful behavior or minimize the reality of betrayal, but it shifts your focus from being a victim of the situation to being someone who is growing through it. The presence of difficulty does not mean the absence of protection. Sometimes it is within the difficulty that protection is most active. As you deepen your connection to this sense of protection, fear begins to lose its intensity. You may still feel it, but it no longer dictates your actions. There is a quiet confidence that develops, not because everything is resolved, but because you are no longer alone in facing it. This confidence allows you to move forward without being weighed down by constant suspicion or anxiety. It creates space for clarity, for healing, and for a more grounded way of engaging with the world around you. Emotional awareness is often misunderstood as simply being in touch with your feelings, but in reality, it is far more than that. It is the ability to observe, understand, and respond to your emotional experience without becoming overwhelmed or controlled by it. When it comes to hidden enemies, whether internal or external, emotional awareness becomes one of the most powerful forms of protection you can develop. Many of the threats we face do not begin as obvious dangers. Start as subtle emotional shifts, a feeling of discomfort in a conversation, a quiet sense of unease around a person, or a recurring pattern of self-doubt that seems to appear without clear reason. These emotional signals are often the first indicators that something is not aligned or safe. However, if you are not aware of them, or if you have learned to ignore or suppress your emotions, these signals go unnoticed. Over time, what could have been recognized early becomes something that takes deeper root. Developing emotional awareness means learning to pause and pay attention. Instead of reacting immediately, you begin to notice what you are feeling and ask yourself why. This pause creates space between the stimulus and your response. In that space, you are no longer acting purely out of habit or past conditioning. You are choosing how to respond based on present awareness. This is what transforms emotional awareness into a shield that interrupts automatic patterns that may otherwise lead you into harm. There is also a level of honesty required in this process. Emotional awareness is not about labeling feelings as good or bad, it is about acknowledging them as they are. If you feel jealousy, fear, anger, or insecurity, recognizing these emotions does not make you weak or flawed. It makes you aware. And awareness is what allows transformation to happen. When emotions remain unrecognized, they tend to operate in the background, influencing your decisions and interactions. Without your conscious consent, hidden enemies often exploit emotional blind spots. If someone knows, consciously or unconsciously, that certain behaviors trigger insecurity or confusion in you, they may continue to act in ways that keep you off balance. Without emotional awareness, you may internalize the effects of those interactions, believing that the discomfort is entirely your fault. But when you are aware, you begin to see the connection between what is happening externally and what you are experiencing internally. This clarity allows you to set boundaries, to step back, or to engage differently. Emotional awareness also protects you from your own inner narratives. The mind has a tendency to create stories based on past experiences, and these stories can distort your perception of present reality. For example, if you have been hurt before, you may interpret neutral situations as threatening. Without awareness, you react as though the threat is real. With awareness, you can recognize that the feeling is rooted in something older, something that may not fully apply to the present moment. This recognition does not eliminate the emotion, but it changes your relationship with it. Another important aspect of emotional awareness is regulation. Being aware of your emotions does not mean you are overwhelmed by them. It means you can experience them without losing your center. When anger arises, you can feel it without immediately acting on it. When fear appears, you can acknowledge it without allowing it to paralyze you. This capacity to remain grounded in the presence of strong emotions is what makes emotional awareness such an effective shield. Over time, as you continue to develop this awareness, you become less reactive and more intentional. Situations that once triggered immediate responses begin to feel different. You notice patterns more quickly, you recover from emotional disturbances more easily, and you navigate relationships with greater clarity. Shield is not something external that blocks everything out. It is an internal capacity that allows you to engage with the world without losing yourself in it. Fear is one of the most powerful forces shaping human behavior. Yet it often operates in ways that are subtle and deeply ingrained. It does not always present itself as obvious panic or visible anxiety. More often it appears as hesitation, self-doubt, avoidance, or the quiet decision to stay small rather than risk discomfort. Psychological oppression works in a similar way. It is not always imposed externally through force, it is often internalized over time, becoming part of how you see yourself and what you believe you are capable of. Breaking free from fear begins with recognizing that much of what you experience is not rooted in your present reality but in past conditioning. Experiences that once overwhelmed you, moments where you felt powerless or unsafe, can leave imprints on your nervous system. These imprints shape how you interpret current situations. A neutral event may feel threatening, a small challenge may feel overwhelming, and opportunities for growth may feel like risks to your safety. Without awareness, you begin to organize your life around avoiding these feelings rather than understanding them. Psychological oppression often develops when these fears are reinforced by external influences. This could be through environments where your voice was minimized, where your value was questioned, or where you were made to feel dependent on others for validation. Over time, these experiences can lead to a diminished sense of agency. You may begin to believe that you are not capable of making decisions, that you need approval to move forward, or that stepping outside familiar boundaries will lead to rejection or failure. These beliefs become limitations that feel real, even when they are no longer necessary. To break free, there has to be a shift from unconscious reaction to conscious awareness. This means noticing when fear is influencing your decisions. It means asking yourself whether the threat you perceive is truly present, or whether it is a reflection of something unresolved from the past. This questioning does not dismiss your experience, it creates space to examine it more clearly. In that space, you begin to see that fear, while powerful, is not always accurate. There is also a need to reconnect with your sense of agency. Psychological oppression often disconnects you from your own authority, making you feel as though your life is controlled by external forces. Reclaiming that authority does not mean ignoring reality or denying challenges. It means recognizing that you have the capacity to respond, to make choices, and to influence the direction of your life, even within limitations. This shift in perspective changes how you relate to fear. Instead of being something that dictates your actions, it becomes something you can observe and work through. Breaking free from fear does not happen all at once. It is a gradual process of facing what you have avoided, challenging what you have believed, and expanding what you think is possible. Each time you act in spite of fear, you create new experiences that begin to reshape your internal patterns. What once felt impossible starts to feel manageable, and what once felt overwhelming begins to lose its intensity. There is also an important distinction between fear that protects and fear that limits. Some forms of fear are necessary. They help you recognize genuine danger and respond appropriately. But much of the fear that keeps you stuck is not protective, it is restrictive. Learning to differentiate between the two is essential. It allows you to respect your instincts without being controlled by them. As you continue this process, psychological oppression begins to loosen its hold. The beliefs that once defined your limits start to feel less convincing. The patterns that once kept you confined begin to shift. You may still experience fear, but it no longer has the same authority over your choices. Instead, it becomes one part of your experience. Something you can acknowledge without surrendering to it. Trust is often easiest when life feels stable, when outcomes are predictable, and when the people around you seem aligned with your well-being. But the kind of trust that Psalm 3 points toward is not built in comfort. It is formed in adversity, in moments when you feel surrounded, misunderstood, or even threatened. Trusting God in these conditions is not a passive act. It is an active, conscious choice to anchor yourself in something deeper than what you immediately see. Adversity has a way of narrowing your focus. When you feel attacked, whether emotionally, psychologically, or even socially, young attention naturally shifts toward the source of that pressure. You begin to analyze it, anticipate it, and sometimes even magnify it. The presence of adversity can feel overwhelming, as if it defines the entirety of your reality. In this state, trust becomes difficult because your perception is dominated by what is going wrong rather than what is holding you steady. Trusting God in these moments requires a shift in where you place your attention. It is not about denying the reality of adversity or pretending that everything is fine. It is about recognizing that there is a larger context beyond what is immediately visible. Psalm 3 reflects this shift. It acknowledges the presence of enemies, yet it does not allow their presence to dictate the emotional or spiritual state of the one who is praying. Instead, there is a turning inward and upward toward a source of protection and support that is not dependent on external circumstances. This kind of trust often challenges the desire for immediate resolution. When you are facing adversity, the natural inclination is to want the situation to change as quickly as possible. You want the conflict to end, the pressure to ease, and the threat to disappear. But trust does not always guarantee immediate change. Instead, it offers stability within the uncertainty. It provides a sense of grounding that allows you to remain centered even when the external situation remains unresolved. There is also a vulnerability in trusting God during adversity. It requires letting go of the illusion that you can control every outcome. It asks you to accept that there are aspects of your situation that are beyond your direct influence. This can feel uncomfortable, especially if you are used to relying on your own efforts to navigate challenges. But within that vulnerability, there is also a form of strength. It is the strength that comes from not carrying everything on your own, from allowing yourself to be supported by something greater. Trusting God also reshapes how you interpret adversity. Instead of seeing it solely as a threat or a punishment, you begin to see it as part of a larger process. This does not mean that the adversity is good in itself, but it suggests that there is meaning and growth that can emerge from it. When you trust, you are less likely to be consumed by resentment or fear. Instead, you become more open to understanding what the experience is revealing about you, your resilience, your patterns, and your capacity to endure. Another important aspect of this trust is consistency. It is not something that is practiced only when things become difficult. It is developed over time through repeated moments of turning toward faith rather than away from it. Each time you choose trust in the face of adversity, you reinforce that connection. Over time, it becomes less of a struggle and more of a natural response. Even when you feel surrounded, trust creates a sense of space within you. It allows you to step back from the intensity of the situation and reconnect with a deeper sense of calm. This does not eliminate the presence of adversity, but it changes how you relate to it. Instead of being overwhelmed, you are able to stand within it, grounded in a belief that you are supported, guided, and not alone in what you are facing. Rising above conflict does not mean escaping it or pretending it does not exist. Conflict is an inevitable part of human experience, especially when values, expectations, or interests collide. What defines your path is not whether conflict appears, but how you respond to it. Inner strength and faith are what allow you to engage with conflict without being consumed by it, to move through it without losing your sense of self. When conflict arises, the immediate reaction is often emotional. Anger, frustration, defensiveness, or even fear can take over quickly. These reactions are natural, but when they dominate your response, they tend to escalate the situation rather than resolve it. Inner strength begins with the ability to pause in the midst of these emotions. It is the capacity to feel what you feel without allowing it to dictate your behavior. This pause creates space for awareness, and within that space you have the freedom to choose a more grounded response. Faith plays a crucial role in this process. It provides a perspective that extends beyond the immediate tension of the conflict. Instead of viewing the situation as something that must be won or controlled, faith allows you to see it as something that can be navigated with wisdom and restraint. It reminds you that your worth and your stability are not determined by the outcome of a single interaction or dispute. This perspective reduces the urgency to react impulsively and opens the door to a more thoughtful approach. Rising above conflict also involves understanding that not every battle needs to be fought in the way it presents itself. Sometimes the most powerful response is not direct confrontation, but clarity and boundaries. When you are grounded in inner strength, you are less likely to be pulled into unnecessary arguments or to engage in patterns that lead nowhere. You begin to recognize when a situation requires your voice and when it requires your distance. This discernment is a sign of growth. It reflects an awareness of what serves you and what does not. There is also a shift in how you perceive the other person involved in the conflict. Instead of seeing them solely as an opponent, you may begin to recognize that they are also influenced by their own fears, insecurities, and experiences. This does not excuse harmful behavior, but it changes the emotional tone of your response. It allows you to approach the situation with a degree of empathy, even if you choose to maintain firm boundaries. This balance between understanding and self-respect is essential for rising above conflict rather than being trapped within it. Inner strength is not about suppressing your voice or avoiding difficult conversations. It is about expressing yourself in a way that is aligned with your values rather than driven by momentary emotion. When you speak from a place of clarity and calm, your words carry more weight. You are not reacting to provoke or defend, you are communicating to express truth and maintain integrity. This approach often de-escalates tension and creates the possibility for resolution, even if the other person does not immediately respond in the same way. Faith reinforces this strength by reminding you that you are not alone in navigating these challenges. It provides a sense of support that goes beyond human interaction. When you trust that there is a greater order or purpose at work, you are less likely to feel threatened by every disagreement or conflict. This reduces the need to control outcomes and allows you to focus on how you show up within the situation. Over time, as you continue to practice responding with inner strength and faith, conflict begins to feel different. It no longer has the same power to destabilize you. You become more resilient, more centered, and more capable of maintaining your peace even in the presence of tension. Instead of being pulled into cycles of reaction, you stand in a place of awareness, choosing your responses with intention and clarity.